Hello, my name is Shaun Peapell. I am a CHCSP and the Vice President of Global Threat Services at Rootshell Security. So I guess this is the question that every organisation really should be asking themselves, right now. What happens when cyber attackers stop moving, at human speed? Because when we talk about kind of AI-driven threats, the conversation often goes straight to things like, can AI find new vulnerabilities? Can it, discover unknown bugs? Can it write exploit code? And yes, that really does matter, but I think there are other concerns, and seriously, that is, what happens when AI-powered bad actors can move through your environment faster than what your defenders can even understand what the hell's going off. And that is the real shift. We're not just talking about better attacking here, we're talking about faster attacks, we're talking wider attacks, more parallel attacking and that adaptive type of style of attack. And that changes the game absolutely completely. Think about how a traditional penetration tester works. They investigate, they enumerate, they might test a single path or maybe two, and they can pivot, laterally move, and then they document and then kind of move again. Even a brilliant human tester is still bounded by time, attention, and working hours. But an AI-driven attacker, that model could essentially explore multiple paths at any single time. Identity, cloud, SaaS endpoints, network routes, APIs, misconfiguration, service accounts, all at the same time. No one attack path, but a swarm of attacks. And this is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable for me. The attack, might not look like, one clean intrusion, if you like. It might just look like noise, a failed login here or a strange API call there, suspicious endpoint, event somewhere else. Individually, these, signals might look, fairly manageable, but together, could this be a, machine speed campaign unfolding in real time? I guess that really does lead to the next question. Could your defenders connect the dots quickly enough? Because detection is definitely not the same as control. A lot of organisations can detect, suspicious activity, but can they triage it, fast enough? Can they understand the blast radius? Can they decide what actually really matters? Can they contain without waiting for like 5 approvals? Can they revoke access, isolate host, block egress, rotate secrets and shut down risky sessions before the attacker kind of branches out again? The real issue is not do we have alerts, but can we respond at the speed of the attack? Now let's talk about volume. AI-driven, attacks could generate more activity than what a human team could, comfortably process, and this creates what I would like to call an incident reaction exhaustion. Not just attacking systems, but attacking the defender's capability to think about what to do next. Flood the SOC with signals, trigger multiple investigational sort of threads, create false positives and false trails, vary payloads, change infrastructure, force analysts to manually triage, if you like, whilst the attacker keeps branching out. At that point, the weakness may not just be an individual, host or a firewall. Maybe it's the operating model. So what should organisations be doing? Okay, so let's just run through a quick kind of hit list on what cyber defence teams could be doing. So first of all, number one, identity first sort of defence, because AI speed attacks, identity is usually the motorway. Service accounts, API keys, OAuth grants, admin roles, stale accounts, overly permissive users. if the setup and the configuration is messy and it lacks in housekeeping, then the attacker gets options, and AI-driven sort of attacks love options. Number 2, so pre-authorized containment. I think it's really important. Security teams need crystal clear rules of engagement. Under defined conditions, they should be able to do things like disable tokens, isolate machines, revoke sessions and quarantine workloads immediately, not after a meeting or several layers of permission or raising a ticket that might be sat in a queue immediately. Third, sort of graph-based detection. So stop treating every alert like a separate event. We need to connect the dots. The attacker sees your environment like a graph essentially. Your defenders need to see it the same way too. Sort of endpoint, identity cloud, SaaS, network. This is how you spot the campaign unfolding, not just a symptom or individual artifacts of an attack. Fourth, automation with absolute human judgment. Humans should still make the important calls. It's human in the loop is the idea, but machines need to do the heavy lifting, utilizing AI on the defense side for that enrichment, that clustering, the prioritization, correlation, and that kind of noise reduction. When you've got a machine-based campaign, there's going to be lots of alerts coming in. You're going to need that AI capability to help you make sense of it. Because if the attacker is operating at machine speed, then defenders cannot rely on kind of spreadsheet speed response, if that makes sense. They need machine speed responses in return. The fifth is deception. Building things like honey tokens, decoy credentials, fake, sort of services, canary files, synthetic admin paths. If an AI agent is ripping through your organization and your environment, give it traps to touch, slow it down, make it wade through tar whilst you can triage and get the problem identified and sorted. Make exploration noisy for the attacker, and it becomes very valuable then for the defender. So I guess the organisations that will struggle most are not necessarily the ones with bad security teams. They'll be the ones with slow or slower security models. Too many approvals, fragmented tools, poor asset visibility, weak logging, noisy alerts, manual triage, unclear ownership. In a human speed world, those weaknesses alone, can be absolutely painful and typically are. In an AI speeded world, these become very, very dangerous. So the simple truth is cyber defense isn't, a detection problem. For me, it's more of a speed problem. AI attackers don't always, just need that one flawless exploit. They can also win by moving faster than the defense teams can actually react. And that means the winning organizations will be those that kind of, really get to know and reduce that blast radius, automate safe containment, strengthen identity, improve correlation and practice response, especially under pressure. That's the key thing here. You've got to mimic the pressure and simulate the pressure, because the next generation of attacks may not arrive as a single intruder knocking at the door. They may arrive as an absolute swarm of attacks. And the key question is, when that swarm hits, will your organisation be watching the alerts, or will they just be taking control? There's a big difference there. And that's the shift leaders really need to understand. AI doesn't just make attackers smarter, it makes them a hell of a lot faster.